Hi, are you taking the US Citizenship Test? This video is part 4 on the facts you need to know about the colonial period and the history of US independence. There are 8 videos in this series containing all of the facts that you need to know to prepare for and pass the test first time. It is from the official government study guide and contains all of the 100 official questions and answers that you need to learn for the test. Let's get started. For more than 200 years, the United States has strived to become a more perfect union. Its history has been one of expansive citizenship for all Americans. By learning about our shared history, you will be able to understand our nation's traditions, milestones, and common civic values. Our country is independent because of the strength, unity, and determination of our forefathers. It is important for future Americans to know this story. We are people working towards great ideals and principles guided by equality and fairness. This is important to keep our country free. As Americans, we have been committed to each other and our country throughout our history. The following section will help you understand American history from the colonial period and independence to the Civil War and other important events during the 1800s, 1900s, and today. Colonial period and independence. In the 1600s and 1700s, colonists from England and other European countries sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to the American colonies. Some left Europe to escape religious restrictions or persecutions, to practice their religion freely. Many came for political freedom, and some came for economic opportunity. These freedoms and opportunities often did not exist in the colonists' home countries. For these settlers, the American colonies were a chance for freedom and a new life. Today, many people come to the United States for these same reasons. Great American Indian tribes such as the Navajo, Sioux, Cherokee and Iroquois lived in America at the time the Pilgrims arrived. The Pilgrims settled in an area where a tribe called the Wampanoag lived. The Wampanoag taught the Pilgrims important skills such as how to farm with different methods and how to grow crops such as corn, beans, and squash. Relations with some American Indian tribes became tense and confrontational as more Europeans moved to America and migrated west. Eventually, after much violence, the settlers defeated those American Indian tribes and took much of their land. Slavery existed in many countries long before America was founded. By 1700, many Africans were being brought to the American colonies as slaves. Men, women, and children were brought against their will. They were often separated from their families when they were sold as slaves. Slaves worked without payment and without basic rights. Most worked in agriculture, but slaves did many kinds of work in the colonies too. Slavery created a challenge for a nation founded on individual freedoms and democratic beliefs. It was one of the major causes of the American Civil War. The American colonists' anger had been growing for years before the Revolutionary War began in 1775. The decision to separate from the British was not an easy choice for many colonists. However, Great Britain's repeated injuries against the Americans, as noted in the Declaration of Independence, convinced many to join the rebellion. The British taxed the colonists without their consent, and the colonists had nobody to represent their needs and ideas to the British government. They were also angry because ordinary colonists were forced to let British soldiers sleep and eat in their homes. The colonists believed the British did not respect their basic rights. The British governed the colonists without their consent, denying them self-government. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776. He was a very important political leader and thinker. Some of the most important ideas about the American government are found in the Declaration of Independence, such as the idea that all people are created equal. Another important idea is that people are born with certain rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson was the third President of the United States, serving from 1801 to 1809. Before becoming president, Jefferson was governor of Virginia and the first US Secretary of State. He strongly supported individual rights, especially freedom of religion. Jefferson wanted to protect these rights. For this reason, he did not want a strong national government. In 1774, representatives from 12 of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for the First Continental Congress. Of the 13 colonies, only Georgia was absent. These representatives were angry about British laws that treated them unfairly. They began to organize an army. The Second Continental Congress met in 1775 after fighting began between the colonists and the British Army. This Congress asked Thomas Jefferson and others to write the Declaration of Independence. When Thomas Jefferson finished his draft of the Declaration of Independence, he took it to John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and others on the committee to review it. After changes were made by the committee, the declaration was read to the members of the entire Congress. The purpose of the declaration was to announce the separation of the colonies from England. The Declaration of Independence stated that if a government does not protect the rights of the people can create a new government. For this reason, the colonists separated from their British rulers. On the 4th of July 1776, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. The 13 original states were all former British colonies. Representatives from these colonies came together and declared independence from Great Britain in 1776. After the Revolutionary War, the colonies became free and independent states. When the 13 colonies became states, each state set up its own government. They wrote state constitutions. Eventually, the people in these states created a new form of national government that would unite all the states into a single nation under the US Constitution. The first 3 colonies to become states were Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. This happened in 1787. 8 colonies became states in 1788. These were Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, and New York. North Carolina became a state in 1789. Rhode Island became a state in 1790. Although the colonies were recognized as states after the Declaration of Independence, the date of statehood is based on when they ratified or accepted the US Constitution. Today, the United States has 50 states. The Constitutional Convention was held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from May to September 1787. 55 delegates from the 12 of the original 13 states, except for Rhode Island, met to write amendments to the Articles of Confederation. Those delegates met because many American leaders did not like the Articles. The national government under the Articles of Confederation was not strong enough. Instead of changing the Articles of Confederation, the delegates decided to create a new governing document with a stronger national government, the Constitution. Each state sent delegates who worked for 4 months in secret to allow for free and open discussion as they wrote the new document. The delegates who attended the Constitutional Convention are called the Framers. On the 17th of September 1787, 39 of the delegates signed the new Constitution. The Constitution, written in 1787, created a new system of US government, the same system that we have today. James Madison was the main writer of the Constitution. He became the 4th President of the United States. The US Constitution is short, but it defines the principles of government and the rights of citizens in the United States. The document has a preamble and 7 articles. Since its adoption, the Constitution has been amended or changed 27 times. 3/4 of the states, 9 of the original 13, were required to ratify or approve the Constitution. Delaware was the first state to ratify the Constitution on the 7th of December 1787. In 1788, New Hampshire was the 9th state to ratify the Constitution. On the 4th of March 1789, the Constitution took effect and Congress met for the first time. George Washington was inaugurated as president the same year. By 1790, all 13 states had ratified the Constitution. The Federalist Papers were 85 essays that were printed in New York newspapers while New York State was deciding whether or not to support the US Constitution. The essays were written in 1787 and 1788 by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison under the pen name Publius. The essays explained why the state should ratify the Constitution. Other newspapers outside New York also published the essays as other states were deciding to ratify the Constitution. In 1788, the papers were published together in a book called The Federalist. Today, people still read the Federalist Papers to help them understand the Constitution. Benjamin Franklin was one of the most influential founding fathers of the United States. He was the oldest delegate to the Constitutional Convention and one of the signers of the US Constitution. He was a printer, author, politician, diplomat, and inventor. By his mid-20s, he was an accomplished printer, and he began writing books and papers. Franklin's most famous publication was Poor Richard's Almanac. He also organized America's first library. Its members loaned books to one another. He was very active in colonial politics. He also visited England and France many times as a US diplomat. In 1775, the Second Continental Congress appointed Franklin the first Postmaster General. George Washington is called the father of our country. He was the first American president. Before that, he was a brave general who led the Continental Army to victory over Great Britain during the American Revolutionary War. After his victory over the British Army, Washington retired to his farm in Virginia named Mount Vernon. He left retirement to help create the new country's system of government. He presided over the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. George Washington was the first President of the United States. He began his first term in 1789. He served for a second term beginning 1793. Washington played an important role in forming the new nation and encouraged Americans to unite. He also helped define the American presidency. He voluntarily resigned from the presidency after 2 terms. He set an example for future leaders in his own country and the world by voluntarily giving up power. The tradition of a president serving no more than 2 terms continued in the United States until Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was elected to office 4 times, 1933 to 1945. The 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, passed in 1947, now limits presidents to 2 terms. So let's now cover the questions and answers that you need to learn for this civics test that are relevant to the colonial period and independence. What is one reason colonists came to America? The potential answers are freedom, political liberty, religious freedom, economic opportunity, to practice their religion, and to escape persecution. Who lived in America before the Europeans arrived? The answer is American Indians or Native Americans. What group of people was taken to America and sold as slaves? The answer is Africans or people from Africa. Why did the colonists fight the British? The potential answers are because of high taxes, taxation without representation, because the British Army stayed in their houses, boarding and quartering, and because they didn't have self-government. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? The answer is Thomas Jefferson. When was the Declaration of Independence adopted? The answer is the 4th of July, 1776. There were 13 original states. Name 3. The potential answers are New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. What happened at the Constitutional Convention? The potential answers are the Constitution was written, or the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution. When was the Constitution written? The answer is 1787. The Federalist Papers supported the passage of the US Constitution. Name one of the writers. The potential answers are James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Publius. What is one thing Benjamin Franklin is famous for? The potential answers are as a US diplomat, as the oldest member of the Constitutional Convention, as the first Postmaster General of the United States, as writer of Poor Richard's Almanac, and that he started the first free libraries. Who is the father of our country? The answer is George Washington. Who was the first president? The answer is George Washington. Thanks for watching. For part 5 of this series, please click here. That video is on the dates that you need to know from the 1800s to pass the US Civics Test. So for my complete course with the complete episodes in this series and my full audiobook with everything you need to know to pass the US Civics Test first time, just click in the description below for the link. This course contains all of the knowledge and facts that you need to know for the test. See you in the course.